Hi. So I've been grinding out my items menu. I'll show you what I got. It's not much from the last episode, but I've been having some interesting trouble that I think would make for a good short talking topic. So this is the same, use and sort, don't do anything different yet. They both take me to sort, and you can see the item list, and it's kind of similar, except you'll notice that there aren't duplicates anymore. The three tonics have converged into one slot. Some alignment problems still, the cursor isn't aligned right, and I think the names are even more misaligned than they were, so I think I've tried to make a small edit and I've hit the wrong target. I've got this empty slot. It shouldn't actually say nan in the description, but it's meant to have a dash instead. But the idea is I put an item, and then just like the commands, I've got a way of removing it quite simply. The stacking of the items is where I've had the most trouble. So first of all, you'll notice that the equipment are stacking as well. So this iron sword stacks, but it has undesirable effects because let's say I take one of the irons out, I go to the next one, you can see that the second iron that was hiding is the rare one that we had from last time, or the gold rarity one that we had from last time. So stacking those items is not exactly what we want. As per design, we wanted to keep them separate, but I want the consumable items to stack because they don't have any interesting detail that differentiates themselves from each other. And if you start loading up on, say, tonics, then having to scroll through pages and pages of tonics isn't exactly ideal. You know, if I want lots of interesting and diverse consumable items, which I do, it's part of the motivation for having the pouch interface, I need the items to stack. It's not really an option to forego that, which conflicts a bit with the way I've structured this item system, because I designed it so that each item would be stored as an instance in my array. So they've all got their own instance ID with some properties that are unique. That's why different iron swords can be the same item, but they can have different rarity, different affixes, which means stacking doesn't really work. If I was storing the inventory in an array that was simply indexed by its item identifier, then I could have the value stored in that array to correspond to the amount of that item that I have, right? But what I need to do for my inventory is I actually need the best of both worlds here, because I've opted to store consumable and equipment items in the same inventory, and I want to keep them in the same inventory. I'll get to why in a second, but I need to kind of differentiate the rules. So this is in progress. I don't want the equipment to stack, but I'm pretty sure I have a good idea of how I'm going to do it. You can see as I put the second iron sword, the iron sword is removed from this list, and the size of the whole list is updated. Hey guys, good morning. Today is the finishing of the item menu, and it's been quite a big task, but I'm going to start by showing you what I've done. So now when you go into the items menu, it's divided by use and sort. I think I had this division before, but they functionally still went to the sort menu state, which is the one that allows us to select an option and then bring up the items list. You'll notice that there's now, rather than three separate entries of tonic, it's all been condensed into one, and we've got a value saying that we have three of them. So if I put a tonic in, I go to another slot, our tonic count has been reduced by 1, and similarly I can, let's say I take my weapon out, my iron, if I go to another slot, the tonic has returned. So the interfacing is working properly. Before it was just putting references of the items into the item pouch, it wasn't actually subtracting them from the inventory. I've also got this empty slot. It's not meant to say nan there, it's meant to just be a dash, but I've made a mistake somewhere. But I can empty out that slot again. This is one of the challenges with the series, in that sometimes what I demonstrate in these videos doesn't reflect the amount of pain and work that went into it. Just to finish off this item menu took a very long time, and the big challenge I was having was condensing the consumable items to be stackable, because whilst all items in the item list or in the inventory rather, are treated as instantiated objects. They're not merely indexes that point to like tables of arrays and such. They are objects in the game world. It makes it difficult to stack them together. Despite all the items being in one inventory, I've had to separate the rules out a bit because I don't want the equipment of the same name to stack together, because we'd lose the information on which ones are rare, which ones have affixes, and which ones do not. But we want the items, we want the consumable items to stack, and I really had to wrap my brain for this one. I thought maybe I could make them fundamentally separate inventories, an inventory for consumables and an inventory for equipment, but then I thought I'd have to duplicate all my code that sorts the inventories, adds items, removes items from the inventories, all of that stuff. So I didn't want to do that. I might briefly towards the end of the episode go through how I overcame that struggle actually, but yeah, it took a very long time. I've also got these kind of meta controls down here, so order, which won't do much until I put some entries in, so let's just there you go, filled that kind of just random. So if I go to order thing, orders them by the index order, the same ordering that the inventory uses. And I can also, I'll just open the menu to see that the entries have been removed. And if I do remove all, as you'd expect, they all go back into the inventory. Now these sort controls, the idea is that you don't have unlimited access to this. This is only if you're in like a town or a safe area, right? You're not in the middle of a dungeon run. So typically, I guess sort will be grayed out. I actually want to change. Sort is kind of confusing terminology. It's more like exchange or something, because it's the interface between the item pouch and the inventory. Use, it won't be very useful until I put some items in. So I'll go back, I can go to use. You can see that remove all has been disabled because this interface is the typical use for the item menu when you're not in like a safe area. Like one of your party members might be damaged, you'd go to the item pouch and you'd use health potion or whatever, cure a status ailment, something like that. You can see that in the use menu, it's got my player frames giving you an overview of their statuses and stuff, and you can see that Henez is actually damaged. So what we can do is we can go down to our tonic. You also see every time I navigate the menu, I still haven't adjusted the rules of this menu. So maybe I do. I actually forgot about that. Maybe I will have to go in after that and sort those rules out. I can go ahead, I can select the item, I can navigate through my player frames, and if I go to use it on, let's say, gamer, nothing will happen. Ideally I'd have a sound prompt here, like an error sound, but that's to prevent you, because they're already full health, there's no real reason to have the item consume. But if I use it on Henez, it will go from 4576 to 4676 because the tonic restores 100 health. The item's being consumed and it comes back to the item pouch. How good's that? You'll notice that items that can't be used, such as my two weapons here, they've been dimmed in coloring. The items, because of their like grey on grey coloring, they don't really stand out that much yet. That's something I'll probably do. Well, I mentioned this before, I'll probably give consumables their own coloring. Yeah, and from here I can order the inventory as well. Very cool. That so far is all I've managed to do since the last episode. The next things I'll probably do is I'll fix up the navigating of the item menu, and then I haven't had a good think actually. I probably won't worry about the class map for a good amount of time. I don't think we need that rolling until we get some actual gameplay and progression going. Equipment I will have to do, maybe that's next on the list. Attributes is a helpful one, but I probably don't need. Formation should be an easy one. It's kind of like when I hit commands and I can navigate these guys. This will be the menu essentially, and then I can swap the ordering around and I can change their rows. So that should be an easy one. And back already goes back. But yeah, that's all I've got to show off. Okay, I'm gonna give a real short on how the items manage themselves to stack the consumable type item and to not stack the equipment type item, despite all of the items being stored as instances, because there was a bit of a problem, but I think it all works great now. This script, menu select items list, is run when you're in the items list menu state, which is the menu state where you've got the pouch open and you also have the item list open in the sort option. So like as soon as I press the action button where an item is to be added to the pouch and swapped with the pouch. So naturally we need the cursor positions of the item pouch and the item list, because those are the two item slots that are going to be swapping. First I have to do a special check for an item called no item, which represents right at the bottom of the inventory. There's that persisting empty item object that lets you swap out an item for like a null space. So this is like a special check. In that case, we don't want it to be removed from the inventory. We don't want to give the pouch an item per se, we just want to empty the spot. The item is not meant to actually be taken out and used. If it is a normal item, however, we want to add the item from the inventory to the pouch, and then we want to remove the item from the inventory. And then after any changes made to the inventory, and of course at the end we want to give whatever item was in the pouch, that's why we're taking a snapshot of it here, we want to give that to the inventory. But after that, whenever we make any changes to the inventory, two things are run: item sort and then item count. Sort is kind of where we make the distinction between what the item list shows and what the inventory actually contains, because the inventory, which is this INB, that is the real inventory, and that holds each object, each item instance on its own index in that list. For what we actually display in the item list, we need an interfacing array to kind of trick the UI into, well, we need another inventory which handles the stacking of consumable items for us, which I use inventory stack. So the way sort works very quickly is we loop through all of the item indexes, and then we see if any of that item index is within our inventory. So the first item is tonic 0 at the moment, so it then goes through all of the inventory slots and it finds all of the tonic 0s, which will be 3 of them in our debug menu, puts them in an inventory sort, which is like our temporary inventory. That process, like, it naturally, because we're going by the item indexes, it will naturally order them correctly by doing that. Then we got to remove the duplicate entries, right? And so that's where inventory stack comes into play, where after we copy back the sorted inventory to our normal inventory, we then do a check to see if the item being slotted in is a consumable and is the item that was last slotted in based on the inventory order. And if it is, then we skip adding that instance reference, and instead we increment the quantity that's compared to that index slot. So inventory stack, what that ends up being is the same as inventory, except with all of the duplicates of the stackable item type, which is consumable. All of those are removed, but equipment item types and whatever other item types, they will look the same, for instance. So the item list will actually be, what will be drawn and shown on the screen is this inventory stack, but whenever we make changes to the inventory, the actual item instances are all in the inventory. So what that means is if we try to make a change to a stackable item, say we take a tonic out of the inventory, we're not actually taking out what the index, what the cursor is pointing to. Instead we tell it to, because it is item type consumable, we're going to find the first instance in the actual inventory, take that out instead. But then whenever a change is made to the inventory, we run the sort again and it recorrects the stack for every time. So it's a, it's a little bit of magic, a little bit of genius, a little bit of Henez. So that's that. If you understood exactly what I said, then hit that like button. It's going to be a few menu episodes, I'm afraid, but I'm excited. You guys excited? I'm excited. Woo! Zoom in.